Hello everyone and welcome to Burnt Toaster Productions. I'm your host, Burnt Toaster. Last month I beat Fable Anniversary only using Crossbows and the multi-arrow spell. Thanks to this commenter, I actually started asking myself if Crossbows did get better or not, and since I genuinely never touched the Crossbows in Fable 2, I didn't actually know the answer. So in today's video, I'm going to find out by attempting to beat Fable 2 with only Crossbows. Let's take a look at the rules. I must only use crossbows. Unlike the previous video, magic will be barred completely. Crossbows are allowed to be purchased. XP potions are not allowed to be used. If I fall 3 times in combat, the run will be considered a failure. I will, however, continue on and beat the game if the worst should come to pass. And that's it for the rules. I really appreciate the run ideas you all have been providing. I'll do my best to get to them when I can, so keep them coming if you want a chance of the next video to be your run idea. Enough of all that though. Let's get into the run, shall we? As usual, I start out as a street urchin that's as poor as a louse. I'm not going to focus too much on this part of the game since it's effectively just a tutorial section. Regardless, thanks to Teresa, Rose decides to take a chance on a magical music box that only costs 5 gold. In order to make that money, I do some odd jobs around town. We get the box, Rose makes her wish, it's somewhat granted, and we both get shot by Lucian. Years later, I'm finally an adult and can set out on an adventure to end Lucian and his plans. But first I have to more or less go through a small trial, that is finding the Chamber of Fate. Thankfully, I start out with a crossbow by default, which means I don't have to try to find a weapon or even buy one. The beetles in the caves leading to the Chamber of Fate aren't that difficult to handle. The only thing slowing me down is the fact that I can't dodge right at this moment. But unlike Fable Anniversary, I don't have to charge the shot and the reload is fairly quick. Then again, there are 3 different types of crossbows which feel a bit different. More on that later though. Regardless, the beetles are the only threat here and are incredibly easy to exterminate. Once I reach the chamber itself, I do have to learn a will ability. I went for the cheapest one, and after I used it to activate the Culliscate, I discarded it to get some of my XP back, getting myself the first level of Dexterous Styles. The beetles at the top of Hero Hill were a bit more challenging, but that is entirely due to their numbers advantage and the fact that some of them had ranged attacks. Still, they're just beetles, nothing a little repositioning won't fix. With the beetles defeated, I can go on to Barrowstone, except I can't. Thanks to bandits operating in the area, the road to Barrowstone is closed. In other words, I have to go deal with them. Bandits do worry me a bit, since they can have ranged capabilities, and some can also dodge shots. Thankfully, most of the bandits I have to face off against don't have those abilities. I say most because Thag can and will dodge my shots until I stop firing for a few seconds. It makes the fight a bit annoying, but honestly, turning him into a human pincushion is amusing to me. After a nice bit, he's finally eliminated and I can go to Barrowstone. My first order of business is to get a new crossbow. I settled on a light U crossbow since it's a direct upgrade from the one I've been using. Light crossbows are a nice middle ground. They lack a bit of punch but are fast to reload. And right now I'm more worried about reload speed than anything. It also didn't help that the smith only had one decent crossbow. With the rest of my money, I go around and get my appearance in order, then wait for Teresa. Rather than do the honest job Teresa suggested, I had everything I already wanted and just slept to pass the time. Teresa then explains what the Spire is, plus what my task is, which is finding 3 other heroes. Good thing is, I upgraded my crossbow right in time as I have some bandits in Rookridge to fight. And this crossbow works rather well against them, although the ones at a small camp are a fair bit tankier. Thankfully, I don't have to worry about them aggroing as soon as the first shot hits its target. Eventually, I come across the destroyed bridge and have to jump into the water, swimming to a shore with a concerned father. Of course, that means contending with Hobbs. They're not too tough around the start, considering they're goners within 3 or so shots. In the storage room, they seemed a bit tougher and had a somewhat decent numbers advantage. After that encounter, I got a level of accuracy. I was thinking it'd help, if only minimally, to take them down quicker. I didn't really notice a difference, but it's only the first level. The cavern-like areas where things get a fair bit slower. There's a nice amount of Hobbs and I don't have too much room for evasion. After the first group, I felt that it might be a good idea to get a level of toughness. You know, just in case I get beaten to death with a bunch of rusty weapons by a group of angry goblin-like individuals. Still, thanks to being able to dodge, it wasn't that bad. I only got hit once near the end. Once I'm out, I choose to handle those 3 bandits, which was incredibly quick. Since I'm now in Oakfield, I made a little stop by the weapon vendor to see what crossbows he had on offer. There wasn't much, but I was eyeing a heavy oak crossbow that seemed rather enticing. Sadly, I didn't have enough money. With that disappointment, I went to the clothing trader and got the ranger coat along with the trousers. Now that nothing else is distracting me, I went off to the Temple of Light to talk to the abbot about a potential job. I don't have enough renown yet, so I have to do some quests to impress him before I can escort his daughter around a cave. Well, no time like now to do the A Bridge Too Far quest. It needs to be done anyway before I can travel between Oakfield and Bowerstone. It's a really simple quest. Show up to a few locations, take out some bandits, and keep going until none are left standing. I did notice that some of my shots were tossing the bandits around like ragdolls, which was kind of funny, and a bit unexpected actually. Then I got the 2nd level of Dexterous Styles, giving me the ability to focus my aim to deal more damage. That singular upgrade seems to, more often than not, send the bandits flying back. And when there's a steep enough decline, it'll take them out immediately. If that's not the case, it's pretty easy to get some follow-up shots on them. Before you know it, Dash is the only one remaining, and he's a bit stuck. Once I've loosed a bolt into Dash's chest, I can return to Barnum and get the bridge repaired. For my next feat, I went ahead and decided to do the Till Death Do Us Part quest. It's a pretty quick and easy quest that doesn't require much time. The job is simple. I have to woo Alex and give her a rejection note. I'm not particularly proud of the fact that I chose not to marry her, but I'd rather spend my gold on crossbows than dealing with the housing market. While I was in Bowerstone, I got a pair of explorer boots and dyed them. I also got a light oak crossbow. I still like the reload speed and it was right here, so I figured why not. I returned to the Ghost, complete the quests, and test out my new crossbow on some bandits. Since I still need a little more renown, I just sit around at the tavern and show off one of my trophies until I get the renown I need. After being that annoying guy in a bar that brags way too much about a specific accomplishment, I can go back to the abbot and take on the job of escorting Hannah through the Wellspring Cave. The first chamber, as always, is a breeze. Nothing happens, just a plain old boring room. Once Hannah and I exit, that's where the excitement begins. I get to fight Hollow Men. They're pretty easy to take care of, just need to fire a bolt to knock them down and shoot again to destroy them. Sometimes not even that. I'm glad that not too many spawn at any given time, as I could see their running being an issue in the future, mostly with the tougher variants. Regardless, with the first chamber done, the second one is just as much of a breeze. To be fair, this is a prime spot for picking them off from afar. Before we can reach the third and final chamber, I have to fight off waves of Hollow Men. And yeah, as I said earlier, I can see their ability to rush me down being troublesome. But due to the pretty nice crossbow I'm wielding, I don't have to worry too much about that. After I don't know how many waves, I get to fight a Headless Hollow Man. It was incredibly easy to defeat, as all I had to do was actively aim and pelt it with bolts. Now we can get to the third chamber. I upgrade my speed to level 2 and then receive the news that the abbot is being held at gunpoint. The abbot perishes, but so does the man that pulled the trigger. Afterwards, the abbot is buried and the acorn is planted. As soon as the blessing is over, Teresa appears to take Hannah with her and teach her everything she needs to know. Right now, I'm left to my own devices, and I decided to become a woodcutter for a while to gather some capital. I was really wanting that heavy oak crossbow, so I got to chopping wood. Once I have enough money, I purchase my new armament. Heavy crossbows are probably the closest comparison with crossbows in Fable Anniversary. They deal more damage and have more range, but are a little bit slower to reload. But hey, it has almost 10 more damage than the light one, so yeah, this is kind of a no-brainer. I then return to the Chamber of Fate and receive the next task to find the Hero of Will. Currently, I must go to Brightwood Tower to find said hero. That does not work out as planned, and Spire guards can be a slight roadblock. It mostly has to do with how aggressive they are when it comes to melee distances, but from range, they've been a non-issue. Just like most enemies so far, they're harder to manage in tight quarters simply because I have less room to maneuver. These three were specifically a pain because they were ready to attempt to cut me down, and they took a few bolts before dropping. Once all of them were dealt with, I sadly was too late to grab Garth. The good news is I got another level of accuracy. I return to Teresa, who gives me my next task, which is to go to the Cow and Corset in Bowerstone and talk to Jeeves about procuring Lucian's diary. I paid him his price and decided to take him out. I also took out a game master that unfortunately phased through the wall since the bolt penetrated through Jeeves. Talk about wrong time, wrong place. Before I can get the diary though, I must fight a troll. Good thing this crossbow is pretty quick to reload. It's by no stretch a difficult fight because just like an anniversary, trolls in Fable 2 are incredibly predictable. It simply takes a bit of time since I can't outright attack the troll as much as I want to, in order to actually damage it. Anyway, the troll eventually meets its end, and that means I can grab that diary, then bring it back to Teresa. She tells Hannah and I that Lucian is recruiting guards from Westcliff, specifically winners of the Crucible. The first stop is over at the Bandit Coast, where, you guessed it, bandits reside in large numbers. They're not a huge or significant challenge for the most part, but that's in part thanks to Hammer keeping a few of them busy while I pick them off. Although she does more often than not get in the way and body block my shots meant for enemies. Right before I made it to the really large encampment, I had decided to get another level of toughness. More survivability is always appreciated and welcome. I didn't really need that extra level as that encampment was pretty easy to handle. Even the highwayman was a bit of a pushover. Naturally, the enemies change in Westcliff as the area introduces Balverines. Balverines are a bit more annoying to fight than anything else I've encountered. It's entirely due to their mobility and that one sorta lengthy combo. It's not so bad when there's a single one, but with two or more, it can get a bit dicey. This is especially noticeable in the Howling Halls. There's usually two Balverines ready to rip me to shreds like a letter from the IRS. Really, the most annoying thing is simply the charge attack because it'll knock me down to the ground. It makes it not so easy to focus a single one down via aiming. Funnily enough, the biggest challenge here, or the White Balverine, was incredibly easy. Almost shockingly so. I was expecting a fight for the ages and instead I kept stunning it with bolts. Not that I'm complaining about that. When it was felled, I settled on getting the next level of dexterous styles. Anyway, I can get out of these godforsaken halls and enter Westcliff Camp. Sadly, I can't get into the Crucible just yet as I don't have enough fame. Well, with that, I must go around and help some people in need, starting with the Cold Comfort Farmer quest. Giles needs someone to get rid of some bandits, and I feel I've proven rather effective against them thus far. Plus, it is incredibly simple. Go into the camp, fight waves of bandits, defeat the leader until he yields, and then let Giles do the rest. It wasn't challenging besides the fact that Ripper could dodge my shots. Still, it's an easy 750 renown. Regardless, I returned to Bowerstone since I had a couple of weapons I could sell, and I got a decent bit of coin since the smith was having a shortage. Because he did have a markup event and I was hankering for a new crossbow, I slept for 2 weeks straight and purchased a Light Master crossbow. After purchasing my new weapon, I only needed just a bit more renown. I chose to do the Summoner's Quest. It's another quick and easy quest, just have to go to Bowerstone Cemetery, eliminate 100 Hollowmen, grab a book, and take it back to the brothers that caused this mess. The weapon upgrade wasn't necessarily needed, but it did make quick work of the Hollowmen, so I'm rather pleased with my purchase. Once the brothers have dispelled the chaos they've wrought, I can head back to Westcliff and ready myself for the Crucible. The first round of the Crucible consists of beetles. Nothing too threatening. After the first wave, I got a level of speed to help out. The only thing that the beetles can do is make it more of a pain to get money from the audience as they seem to be a lot stricter about performance this time around. They get wiped out handily. Sadly, I didn't get a perfect round, but at the same time, I'm not really going for them. The second round has Hobbs, and I found this round to be rather annoying. Having a mix of aggressive melee and ranged enemies while all I have is a crossbow is not a great time. I almost fell in combat for the first time. Thankfully, I had a potion to bring myself back up to full health. The third round had more Hobbs, but more of the magic and explosive variety. It was overall a smoother ride than the last round. They were noticeably weaker than the previous round, though that last wave did heat up a bit with the undead Hobbs running about. Still didn't stop me from annihilating them, though. Also, before I forget to mention, I got another level of accuracy. The fourth round was pretty rough because I had to fight several hordes of Hollowmen, and in the later waves it became a fair bit difficult to simply not perish. Just as I had predicted, their ability to run was overwhelming me. The good thing is I have the ability to roll around like an overly enthusiastic dog, and maybe a health potion to help along the way. Eventually they're whittled down and I can move on to the next round, which consisted of bandits. Honestly, it was a rather pleasing reprieve from the fresh hell I had just gone through. With the first wave of them done for, I got another level of toughness. To be fair, I've likely passed the worst of it, but at the same time, I'd rather be safe than sorry. The rest of the waves were pretty uneventful, but I did get enough XP to get the strongest ranged ability in Fable 2, that being sub-targeting. I can deal with enemies quicker, disarm them, or possibly slow their advance, albeit only for a moment. It made the next round of bandit slaughter all the quicker because no one could stand a chance against a crossbow bolt to the face. To be fair, not many living things can, but that's besides the point. It worked so well that this was, I believe, the first to third time I ever perfected this round. The next round was just as much, if not more of a joke than the previous one. Those poor Balverines never stood a chance. They also gave me enough XP to get yet another level of speed. Finally, I'm at the final round with the Rock Troll. It was another pretty easy round. The only real threat had to do with the hobs possibly being a distraction. However, if I could take them out fast enough, I had nothing to worry about. It was pretty much just a matter of time before I took down the troll. With the Crucible completed, I can go off to the Spire to try to find Garth. Before I do that though, I help out the Temple of Light with a little problem. The antithesis of their way of life is essentially assaulting their holy site. As much as I don't typically get involved in religious squabbles and the like, I also don't like seeing Oakfield turn into a depressive hole when I return. To be fair, the quest is just combat, which I'm never going to turn down, unless it was absolutely necessary for a run. Genuinely, the only thing to somewhat annoy me is Cornelius interrupting the flow of combat with speech. It didn't stop me, though, from taking him and his hired thugs down. When the quest was done, I saw that the weapon stall in Oakfield was having a sale. Because I wanted to go back to a heavy crossbow, I decided to sleep at the tavern and check it out. My prayers had been answered as this man was selling a heavy master crossbow with 2 augment slots for a cool 19.5k gold. I caved and bought it. Then immediately went to the Stonecutter and Bowerstone Market to get a Golden Touch augment and a Flame augment. Sadly, I won't be able to really test out my new toy. Instead, I have to go to the Spire for a several-year-long holiday. Honestly, there's not really anything of note to talk about. I was extremely disobedient because, why not? The only issue is the section where Garth and I are able to break free from our shackles. You see, the whole idea for this run was to only use crossbows, but in the Spire, there are no crossbows. So if you're wondering if it's possible to beat the game only using crossbows, the answer is no. However, I still see the run as valid, because there's literally nothing I can do about having to use a gun or a cutlass. Given how I've built this hero, I use the gun to get out of here as soon as possible. Once Garth and I make it to the Commandant's area, I experience a most hellacious fight. The fight with the Commandant is utterly necessary and he has some guards with him. At first I thought a great idea would be to disarm the guards so I can focus the Commandant down. It worked alright for the most part, but I was getting hit rather often. And I found out that the Commandant will not go down if there are guards around. After the guards are handled, he's perfectly vulnerable and able to be defeated. After that whole mess, I just have to fight some more guards so Garth and I can make our escape. When I'm finally free, I head to Bowerstone to get my likeness in order, sell the weapons I got from the Spire, and go see Barnum and Westcliff about the investment I gave him. Afterwards, rather than going straight to Rookridge to meet with Hammer, I decided to do the Hob Squatters quest. It's pretty simple, I just have to clear out some hobs with my new crossbow I never got to use. Before I get into the mine proper, I've got some hobs to fight outside of it. This crossbow's pretty solid, definitely a worthwhile investment which is actively giving me money as I defeat enemies. 50 gold a head isn't awful, better than just getting XP out of it. Anyway, in the mine it's the same story as the outside. The hobs weren't much trouble. At the end of it all, the individual that contracted me decided I must die. However, I was quicker on the draw, and I have no idea what happened here, but I find it funny. Once that was done, I finally got over to Rookridge and met with Hammer. I then have a bit of time to kill and go around fighting some highwaymen. I wanted to do that quest that involves getting all the pieces of the map, but I decided to put a pin in it for now as I was called back to the guild. Hammer got some info on our last hero and Garth has a way to reach him. The only issue is, it means we have to go back to his tower in Brightwood and Lucian's men are crawling all over the place. Getting through isn't the trying part. It's a section where Hammer and I must play our part as the Garth defense force and fight off Lucian's men as Garth charges up the Cullis Gate. During said defense, I got the 4th level of accuracy. When Garth is done, I must push through and teleport to wherever the gate will take me. Of course, the thing malfunctions and I get locked in a cage by a man named Old Greg. Greg then gets his soul consumed by a banshee. Can't say he didn't deserve it after he threatened to burn me. Thankfully, my faithful hound fetches the key off his corpse and I can free myself. Shortly after, I get to fight my first Banshee. I was expecting a decent enough fight, not too long, not too short. It was incredibly short because this crossbow is a beast. You'd swear the Banshee was a mere Halloween decoration. The rest of the enemies here are more of what I've already fought for the most part, besides the Elder Hollowmen, but to be fair, it didn't survive for very long. Pressing onward, I finally make it to Bloodstone. Without much else to do, I go to see Reaver. He wants nothing to do with me unless I make more of a name for myself. I don't need much, thankfully. A couple of quests and I'll be good to progress. I started out with the quest rescuing Charlie. Once again, a pretty simple quest that requires me to slay a bunch of Hollowmen. Good thing I got that Golden Touch augment. I'm going to make a killing. Regardless, it's not tough thanks to the crossbow dealing a bunch of damage, and for once I was able to keep Charles alive. Finishing that quest, I head off to do the Evil and Wraithmarsh quest. Sam and Max are back at it again with their shenanigans. They unsurprisingly released a rather nasty Banshee, and it's currently bleeding Bloodstone dry. In other words, it's running amok. If you were expecting this Banshee to put up a fight, you'll be disappointed, as all it took to defeat it was a single bolt. When I returned, Sam and Max's mother was infuriated. I ended up adding fuel to the fire. After Sam said he hated bread, I knew I made the right choice. After that second quest, I had enough renown to finally do Reaver's task, which involves taking a seal over to the Shadow Court in Wraithmarsh. Considering the enemies on the way were nothing more than just some animated bones with either armor or a bit of taut flesh, I breezed through them. And honestly, the shadow creatures were just as much of a joke. Besides the multiple Balverines. As always, it's due to their extreme mobility. However, a headshot seems to suffice for defeating them. When I'm finally done fighting shadows, I get the fun of sacrificing my youth or the youth of another. Sorry, lady, but I don't want to look like an old raisin. If it's any consolation, I made sure to enter suffering right there. I return to Reaver, and that's when Lucien decides to attack. Seeing as trying to get out of here is a lot better than just standing around while the city is under siege, we go through an escape tunnel. Of course, Lucien is a resourceful fellow, and his men flood into the place. It's all for naught, as Reaver and I are built for taking them out at a distance. Though it's not always so seamless. There are a couple of close quarters areas that make it a bit difficult to really take enemies out easily. But at the end of the day, it just takes some perseverance and elbow grease. Eventually, Reaver and I get out of the escape tunnel, uniting with the rest of the crew to get this thing done. However, a great shard appears to complicate matters. The big thing with this fight is the fact that it likes to spawn some Spire guards and the occasional Commandant with a sprinkle of the odd small shard. And it will also attempt to blow me to smithereens. Thankfully, it's not a super rough fight, as the adds aren't anything to really worry about too much. Of course, I'll prioritize targets, but when I have an opening, I'll shoot the Great Shard. Sadly, I can only get a single shot off before it closes itself off to the damage, which is likely due to how much damage I'm dealing in said shot. To be fair, I'm doing some nice damage to the thing, so I can't really complain too much. It doesn't take me long to finally destroy it. After the battle, I'm able to purchase the last level of speed. With the great machine destroyed, Teresa swings on by to teleport us off to Hero Hill, to begin a ritual to take Lucien down. Naturally, after the bright light, Lucien and his men appear to take everyone. Besides me, since I'm the only one that can stop him. My faithful hound, may his soul rest in peace, takes the first bullet for me. I'm then shot and put into a sort of dreamlike place where I'm a kid again. Not much to really talk about besides the fact that I completed all of the tasks within the nick of time. I can then go to sleep and run towards the music box. I then get to see a few flashbacks and get my prize of ending Lucien's reign of terror once and for all. With the music box in hand, I strip Lucien's power from him and shoot him directly in the groin for what I like to call a bolt castration. Hey, he shot my dog. He deserved it. Now I can make my wish. Yeah, I chose the dog. I didn't really have a particular reason other than I simply wanted to. Anyway, everyone says their goodbyes, and I get teleported off to Oakfield, and with that, the run is finished. Of course, I can't say this run was necessarily a challenge, but I was wanting to answer the question of whether or not Crossbows improved compared to Fable Anniversary, and my verdict is yes, they are substantially better. I didn't get a hold of the legendary crossbow as it requires a lot of time and searching, but to be honest, it isn't really needed. Just get a heavy master crossbow with a couple of augment slots if you're feeling fancy. But since crossbows worked similarly to the guns, I didn't really have anything to complain about, because that's how they work in real life, unlike an anniversary where they must be charged to deal the most damage. I want to say it's either likely due to an oversight or maybe some sort of limitation, but Don't take my word for it. I didn't work on the game. Anyway, thank you all for watching. If you made it this far, I'd highly appreciate it if you considered liking, sharing, and subscribing, as well as hitting that little bell so you're notified of new videos, especially if you want to see more content like this in the future. Also, don't be afraid to leave some run suggestions in the comments. I can't promise I'll get to your idea in a timely manner, but I'll do what I can. This has been Burnt Toaster from Burnt Toaster Productions, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.